weeks ago has not been agreed upon, and the release of dozens of hostages still being held by Hamas. It all comes a day after Netanyahu's controversial address to Congress, which saw thousands of protests in the streets outside the U.S. Capitol. DD India's Nick Harper gets more from Washington.
Multiple meetings for the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu here in Washington, the first with President Joe Biden. The two men have known each other for about 40 years, something that Netanyahu reflected on during their Oval Office meeting, saying that Biden had also known every Israeli Prime Minister for the last 50 years. However, they discussed weightier issues in their private meeting, including that ceasefire deal. It was proposed a couple of months ago, but has still not come to fruition. And that includes the release of hostages still being held by Hamas in Gaza. Of course, we've seen something of a rift grow between the two leaders in the last 9 months since this conflict began. Biden has been pushing harder against Netanyahu for Israel to reduce its military offensive, to try and ensure that civilians are not caught up in the crossfire. But we have seen that death toll mount. Now, with Biden unfettered by the need to mount a re-election campaign and knowing that he only has another 6 months in office, there is some thinking that he will be pushing much harder now to try and stop the conflict, but also make sure that Israel reduces what it's doing there, its offensive, its military hardware, the large-scale bombs that it's using in largely populated, densely populated civilian areas. Also here in Washington, the Prime Minister met with Kamala Harris, the Vice President, but also the presumptive Democratic Party nominee. She has said in the past that she would continue that US commitment of support to Israel, including military assistance. But there is speculation that if she becomes president, she will push harder on the humanitarian side of things to ensure that Palestinian civilians are helped by Israel rather than being caught up in the conflict.
I will always ensure that Israel is able to defend itself, including from Iran and Iran-backed militias such as Hamas and Hezbollah. I have had an unwavering commitment to the existence of the State of Israel, to its security, and to the people of Israel. And I will not be silent. Thanks to the leadership of our President Joe Biden, there is a deal on the table for a ceasefire and a hostage deal.
On Friday, the Prime Minister heads to Florida to meet with Donald Trump, someone that he knows from Donald Trump's past presidency. Indeed, the last time that Netanyahu was here in the United States was during the Trump administration about 4 years ago. Those two men have something of a closer bond than we've seen between Biden and Netanyahu. Netanyahu, I guess, hedging his bets during the course of this trip, meeting with the two people, Harris and Trump, one of which will become the president after November's election. Nick Harper in Washington, reporting for DD India.
Families of hostages being held in Gaza said that they had received an absolute commitment that Israel and the United States are urgently working towards a ceasefire deal to end the Gaza war. The families had a meeting with US President Joe Biden and visiting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. Families of hostages are assured that Israel was committed to the current ceasefire proposal.
But we did get a commitment from the President and from the Prime Minister that both teams will be working by the hour in the coming days to put out an adjusted proposal to Hamas, and they understood completely and are partnered with us around the urgency.
Rare moment now where the current President of the United States and anybody who might become President of the United States, both Vice President Harris and Donald Trump, are all aligned in saying this deal must get done now. So anybody on any side who makes the mistaken political calculus that there's benefit in waiting will find out that that logic is wrong. The deal must happen now.